Be me, Alien 28, crunching numbers at a comfortably forgettable tech company, the name's something corporate and hollow. Sounds impressive until you realize nobody outside the building has heard of it. Picture rows of identical desks, lights that buzz like they're judging you, and coffee that tastes like it's been reheated since 2014. The work itself isn't terrible. Steady paycheck, predictable tasks, and I'm competent enough to make it look effortless. Most days I just dissect data sets and hunt for trends while avoiding unnecessary human interaction. Honestly, it suits someone who stopped chasing the follow your passion fantasy a while ago. My main work buddy is a guy named Ozoel. He's a programmer, way more cynical and outspoken than me. We get along because we both see the corporate world for the soulless machine. It is our one refuge, if you can call it that, is the break room on the 4th floor. And by refuge, I mean a small windowless room with a microwave that smells permanently of burnt popcorn and fish. There's a fridge from the 90s that sounds like a dying animal, a single wobbly table, and 2 chairs with mysterious stains on them. The coffee is instant, the kind that's just brown dust. It tastes like sadness and defeat, but it's the only place we can go to get away from our desks for 10 minutes. This was our normal, boring, predictable, and soul-crushingly mediocre. Then Alice happened. She was hired a few months back. New head of HR. You could tell from her first all-staff email what we were in for. It was a masterpiece of corporate jargon, full of words like synergy, paradigm shift, and holistic wellness. She talked about fostering a culture of belonging and dismantling systemic barriers. Azul read it over my shoulder and just groaned. Oh great, one of those. She started implementing new initiatives, almost immediately mandatory sensitivity training workshops, pronoun pins, optional but heavily encouraged, and a monthly newsletter about workplace equity. The newsletter was the worst. It was always filled with passive-aggressive articles about unconscious bias and the emotional labor carried by certain groups. There was one article about toxic masculinity in the break room that claimed things like men talking about sports or cars could be exclusionary. Azael almost had an aneurysm. He just wanted to talk about his project car without being labeled a menace to society. I just kept my head down. It's HR. You don't fight HR. You just nod, smile, and wait for them to focus on someone else. Most of the women in the office seemed to either love her or just tolerate her. A few, like our department's project manager Bonnie, seemed to think it was all a bit much, but she was smart enough to keep her opinions to herself. Alice had this aura of absolute authority. She walked around the office with this serene, knowing smile, like she was a guru and we were all just unenlightened children. She had a way of speaking that made everything sound like a profound truth. Even if it was complete nonsense, we all just learned to live with it. The new normal. Then came the big announcement. Alice sent out a calendar invite to the entire company for a special unveiling event. Mandatory attendance. 4th floor, near the old storage closet. We all shuffled over, wondering what it was this time. A new filtered water machine? A wellness app subscription? Alice was standing there, beaming, next to the closet door, which was now covered by a big purple sheet. She tapped a microphone and started a speech. It was a long one. She talked about the company's commitment to progress. She mentioned how workplaces were historically designed by men, for men, and how this created an environment where women couldn't thrive or feel safe. She said it was time for Innovatech to be a leader in corporate change, to create a space that actively supported and uplifted the women of the company. With a grand flourish, she pulled down the sheet. The old closet door was gone. In its place was a sleek, modern glass door with frosted lettering. It read, "The Athena Lounge." She announced that this was a new, exclusive VIP lounge and wellness center, for women only. A safe space for them to decompress, collaborate, and escape the inherent pressures of a male-dominated corporate structure. She swiped her keycard and the door clicked open, revealing the inside. The entire male population of the office just stood there, silent. It was like looking into another dimension. The floor was hardwood. The lighting was warm and soft. There were plush sofas and velvet armchairs. In one corner, a gleaming top-of-the-line Italian espresso machine was humming quietly. Next to it was a counter with jars of biscotti and gourmet coffee beans. A A stainless steel fridge was stocked with sparkling water, kombucha, and those fancy organic juices. There were bowls of fresh fruit and healthy snacks. We saw sound-dampening panels on the walls, a small library of books, even a high-tech massage chair tucked away in the back. The women gasped and started applauding. Some of them were genuinely ecstatic. Alice smiled, soaking it all in. She explained that every female employee's keycard had been automatically activated for access. Then she looked at the men. And for everyone else, she said with that same serene smile, the existing break room on this floor is, of course, still available for your use. It was a direct, calculated slap in the face. She was telling us, in front of the entire company, that we were second-class employees. We deserved the smelly microwave and the dirt-cheap coffee, while they got a luxury spa. Azael was shaking with anger next to me. He muttered something under his breath about filing a lawsuit. I just stood there. I wasn't angry, not yet. It was something colder. It was the sheer, blatant hypocrisy of it all. The woman who preached about inclusion and equity had just literally segregated the office. The meeting ended. The women excitedly filed into their new paradise. We, the men, just kind of dispersed and shuffled back to our desks in stunned silence. The atmosphere in the office had changed forever. The next few weeks were tense. A clear divide had been established. The women would disappear into the Athena lounge and emerge 20 minutes later, looking refreshed and happy, holding perfectly crafted lattes. They'd talk in the hallways about how amazing it was, how they had a great brainstorming session on the comfy sofas, how the massage chair worked wonders on their back. Meanwhile, the men were crammed into the old break room, which now felt even more depressing by comparison. The place seemed to shrink. The hum of the fridge got louder. The instant coffee tasted even more like battery acid. You'd be in there, trying to eat your sad desk lunch, and you could hear the faint, muffled sounds of laughter coming from the lounge down the hall. It was psychologically brutal. Some of the guys tried to make a joke out of it, calling our break room the Goblin Cave or the Penal Colony. But the jokes were thin. Underneath, everyone was pissed off. Productivity took a nosedive. The guys were demoralized. You can't tell half your workforce they're less valuable and expect them to be motivated. Azael was on a warpath. He complained constantly, to me, to other guys. This can't be legal, he'd say. How is this not a textbook case of discrimination? He was right, of course, but I knew complaining would do nothing. Going to HR was pointless. The head of HR was the architect of the problem. Going above her to her boss, the director, was a huge risk. Without a concrete plan, you just look like a whiner. You get one shot with a guy like that. Alice, for her part, seemed to be enjoying the new dynamic. She'd often be in the Athena lounge herself, holding informal check-ins with the female staff. It created a clear power imbalance. She was forming an inner circle, and if you weren't in it, you were on the outside. One afternoon, I saw one of the older guys from accounting, a man who'd been with the company for 20 years, just staring at the door to the Athena lounge. He just looked tired, defeated. That's when the cold feeling in my gut solidified into a decision. Anger is loud and messy, but cold, calculated action, that gets things done. This wasn't about revenge. It was about principle. It was about the flagrant, smug injustice. That night, I went home and didn't turn on the TV or play any games. I opened my work laptop and navigated to the company's internal policy server. I found the official Innovatech Dynamics Employee Handbook. It was a long, boring PDF, but I read the whole thing, and then I found it. Section 3, Clause 2, Equal Opportunity and Treatment. It was a standard corporate policy statement, but Alice, in her infinite wisdom, had recently updated it. Her new version was even more explicit. It read, Innovatech Dynamics is committed to providing a work environment free of discrimination. All employees shall be treated with fairness and respect. All company-provided facilities, resources, and amenities are to be made available to all employees on an equal basis, regardless of gender, race, religion, or any other protected characteristic. She wrote it herself. She signed off on it. She probably thought it made her look good. She never imagined someone would actually use her own virtue-signaling words against her. I screen-capped the section and saved it. The next day I showed it to Azael. He read it, and a slow, wicked grin spread across his face. "No way," he whispered. "She put it in writing." "She did," I said, "and we're going to hold her to it." Azael was ready to storm the director's office right then and there. I told him to calm down. A direct confrontation wasn't the way. We couldn't look like we were just angry men complaining. We had to look like we were professionals, calmly and reasonably pointing out a policy violation. We had to use the system. We had to play her game, but play it better. My plan was simple. We weren't going to ask for the Athena Lounge to be taken away. We were going to demand our own, an identical one. I spent my lunch break that day drafting a document. I titled it, Formal Request for Equal Facility Provision. It was dry, professional, and full of corporate language. It started by praising the company's recent commitment to employee wellness, citing the success of the New Lounge initiative. Then, it respectfully pointed out the discrepancy in facility access between male and female employees. It quoted Section 3, Clause 2 of the handbook directly. The final section was a formal request for the remediation of this inequality. It requested the establishment of a men's lounge with facilities, amenities, and a budget identical to that of the Athena Lounge. I even gave it a name, the Aries Lounge. I thought that was a nice touch. To make it irrefutable, I created a checklist of amenities, copying everything from the women's lounge. Premium espresso machine, specify model, stocked refrigerator, organic juices, sparkling water, sound dampening panels, ergonomic massage chair, specify model. Every single detail. We were asking not for something similar, but for something identical. This made it a simple question of equality, not a negotiation over what we deserved. When I showed the finished document to Azael, he was speechless. "This is beautiful," he said. "It's malicious compliance at its finest." "It's just following the rules," I replied. The hardest part was getting the other guys on board. We needed signatures, a lot of them. This couldn't just be me and Azael. It had to be a unified front representing the male employees of the company. We started talking to guys one-on-one, during coffee breaks, in the Goblin Cave, in the hallways. At first, a lot of them were hesitant. "Are you crazy? Alice will have our heads." "I don't want to get on HR's bad side. We'll just get fired." The fear was real. Alice had cultivated an atmosphere where crossing her was career suicide. But we were patient. We didn't pressure them. We just laid out the logic. We showed them the handbook. We showed them the request. I explained that this wasn't an attack. It was a formal procedural request based on the company's own written policy. "What can she do?" I'd ask them. "Fire all of us for respectfully asking the company to follow its own rules." How would that look? The tide started to turn after about a week. The daily, grinding humiliation of the situation was doing our work for us. Every time a guy saw a woman walk past with a fancy latte while he was stirring his brown powder, it pushed him a little closer to our side. Every time they had to eat lunch in that depressing room, another one would come find us. "Okay," they'd say, "where do I sign?" We even got Bonnie's unofficial support. I caught her in the kitchen one morning and quietly explained what we were doing. She read the request, and a small smile touched her lips. She couldn't sign it, obviously, but she said, "Good luck. Someone needs to stand up to her." That was a huge morale boost. In the end, we got signatures from over 90% of the male employees, from the interns to the senior managers. It was a thick stack of papers, a testament to a shared sense of injustice. The time had come. I chose my moment carefully. I waited until a Wednesday afternoon, when I knew Alice would be in her office and not busy with meetings. Azael wanted to come with me for moral support, but I told him it was better if I went alone. A group would look confrontational. A single person looks like they're just following procedure. I walked to her office. The door was open. She was typing at her computer, a cup of herbal tea next to her. I knocked softly on the doorframe. "Alice, do you have a moment?" She looked up, her serene HR smile clicking into place. "Elian, of course. Come in. What can I do for you?" I walked in and stood in front of her desk. I didn't sit down. I placed the stack of papers, the request, and all the signatures squarely in the middle of her desk. "I'm here to submit a formal request on behalf of the male employees of the company," I said, my voice calm and even. Her smile faltered for a second as she looked at the thickness of the stack. She picked it up and began to read the first page. I watched her face. It was a fascinating transformation. First, there was confusion. Her brow furrowed. Then, as she understood what she was reading, her eyes narrowed. The confusion turned to disbelief. She flicked through the signature pages, her expression hardening with each page she turned. The serene mask was gone. Completely. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine, unfiltered anger in her eyes. "Is this a joke?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. I didn't flinch. "It's a formal request, as per the procedure outlined in the employee handbook." She let out a short, sharp laugh. It wasn't a happy sound. "You and your little friends think this is clever, don't you? Trying to undermine an initiative that supports women." "We're not undermining anything," I said, keeping my tone perfectly neutral. "We are requesting that the company adhere to its own policy of equal facility provision, which you yourself authored." Her face went pale. Mentioning that she wrote the rule herself was a direct hit. She stared at me, her mind clearly racing. She was cornered, and she knew it. She tried a different tactic. She pushed the papers back towards me. "This is an absurd and bad faith request. You are mocking the real struggles that women face in the workplace. You're trying to derail progress." "We're asking for a coffee machine and a decent place to sit," I countered. "The same one you provided for our female colleagues." The logic was inescapable. There was no argument she could make that didn't expose her own hypocrisy. And, in that moment, she just snapped. Her professional composure shattered completely. With a sudden, furious movement, she grabbed the entire stack of papers, and she ripped it in half. Then she ripped the halves in half again, and threw the pieces into the trash can next to her desk. "Request denied," she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "Now get out of my office, and if you ever bring this up again, I will write you up for harassment and creating a hostile work environment." I just looked at her, at the shredded paper in her bin. I didn't say a word. I just gave a single small nod. Then I turned around and walked out of her office. Azael was waiting for me down the hall, practically vibrating with anticipation. "What happened? What did she say?" I looked at him, and for the first time that day, I smiled. "We got her," I said. "She just gave us everything we need." She thought she had won. She thought tearing up a piece of paper made the problem go away. She had no idea she just escalated this from a simple office dispute to something she would have no power to control. Phase 1 was over. Phase 2 was about to begin. Azael was practically bouncing off the walls. "What do you mean we got her? She ripped it up. She threatened you." I told him to lower his voice and follow me back to my desk. I sat down and opened up my email. "She thinks the evidence is in that trash can," I explained calmly. "She's an ideologue, not a strategist. She reacted with emotion. She forgot we live in a digital age." I showed him the document on my screen. "I have the original file. I have a list of every person who signed it. And now we have a witness, me, to the head of HR's unprofessional conduct, destruction of an official employee document, and direct threat of retaliation." Azael's eyes went wide as he understood. "So what now?" "Now," I said, cracking my knuckles, "I write an email." It was the most carefully composed email of my life. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it like I was filing a bug report, cold, factual, and procedural. To the director, C. Alice. Subject: inquiry regarding company policy on equal facilities, Handbook Section 3.2. The CC to Alice was the important part. She was going to see this happen in real time, no hiding. The body of the email was short and to the point. "Dear Director," it began, "I am writing to seek clarification on the correct procedure regarding the application of our company's equal opportunity policy." I then laid out the facts, one by one, in a numbered list. 1. A new wellness lounge facility. The Athena Lounge was recently opened with access restricted to female employees. 2. In the spirit of the company's commitment to equality, as stated in Section 3.2 of the Employee Handbook, a formal request was drafted and signed by a majority of male employees for the provision of an equivalent facility. A digital copy of this request is attached for your reference. 3. Today, at approximately 3:15 p.m., I submitted this formal request in person to the head of HR, Alice. 4. The request was verbally denied. The physical document containing the request and all employee signatures was subsequently destroyed by the HR manager, Wu. I was advised that any further attempts to discuss this matter would be considered grounds for disciplinary action under the company's harassment policy. I ended the email with a simple, killer line. We respectfully request guidance on the appropriate channels to pursue this matter to ensure the company remains in full compliance with its own stated policies on equal treatment for all employees. Thank you for your time. Sincerely, Elian. I attached the PDF of our original request. Then I took a deep breath and I clicked send. A strange calm washed over me. I had just lit a match and dropped it into a fireworks factory. There was no going back. Azael, who had been reading over my shoulder, just whispered, "Holy crap." We didn't have to wait long. Not even 5 minutes passed before my desk phone rang. The caller ID just said, "Director's office." I answered. It was his personal assistant. Her voice was tight. "Elian, the director needs to see you in his office. Immediately. Alice has also been summoned." I hung up and looked at Azael. He gave me a solid nod. "Go give him hell." Walking to the executive suite on the top floor felt like a movie scene. The carpet was thicker up there. The air was quieter. Alice was already standing outside his door when I arrived. She wouldn't look at me. Her face was a mask of cold fury. She was pale, and I could see a muscle twitching in her jaw. The serene guru was gone, replaced by a cornered animal. The director's assistant opened the door and gestured for us to go in. The director was a man in his late 50s. He wasn't a flashy CEO. He was an engineer by trade who had founded the company in his garage 30 years ago. He was pragmatic, no nonsense, and from what I'd heard, he only cared about two things: product and profit. His office was big, with a huge window overlooking the city. But he wasn't looking at the view. He was sitting at his massive oak desk, staring at his monitor. My email was on the screen. He gestured for us to sit in the two chairs in front of his desk. They felt like they were miles away. For a full minute, he didn't speak. He just sat there, slowly rereading my email. The silence was deafening. Finally, he looked up. His eyes were like ice chips, and he looked directly at Alice. He completely ignored me. "Alice," he said, and his voice was dangerously calm. "Explain this." She opened her mouth, and the usual HR jargon started pouring out. It was a bad faith request, a form of protest meant to mock our equity initiatives. The men were weaponizing our policies against a program designed to support women who face systemic disadvantages. He held up a hand. The motion was small, but it cut her off instantly. "I did not ask for a lecture on social theory," he said, his voice flat. "I asked you to explain this email. Did you, or did you not, create a company facility that is exclusively accessible to one gender?" She hesitated. "Well, yes, but the intention was—" "I don't care about your intention," he snapped, his voice finally rising. "The law doesn't care about your intention. Our insurance provider doesn't care about your intention. A jury doesn't care about your intention. They care about one thing: discrimination. And you have served it up on a silver platter." He leaned forward. "Did you, or did you not, receive a formal request from a group of employees?" "It was a troll," she muttered. "Was it a formal request, yes or no?" "Yes," she said, her voice barely a whisper. He continued, his voice like a hammer, striking an anvil with each question. "And did you then destroy that document? It wasn't a valid— Did you destroy it?" "Yes." "And did you threaten an employee with retaliation for raising a policy concern?" She was silent. She just stared at her hands in her lap. "I see," the director said, leaning back in his chair. He looked at her like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. "In your quest for whatever this is," he gestured vaguely at the air, "you have single-handedly exposed this company to a class action lawsuit that would cost us millions. Millions in legal fees, millions in damages, and a PR nightmare that would destroy our reputation. You have turned my company into a legal minefield." She finally looked up, a desperate look in her eyes. "But it's about creating a safe space," he laughed, a dry, mirthless sound. "A safe space? You declared one half of my workforce to be unsafe. You have alienated, demoralized, and insulted every man who works here. The numbers don't lie, Alice. Productivity in 3 departments has dropped by 12% in the last month. That's your equity initiative in action. It's costing this company money, my money. He finally turned his gaze to me. His expression wasn't angry. It was just assessing. You, he said, you just want a place to make coffee, is that it? I found my voice. We just want the same facilities our colleagues have. We want the company to follow its own policy. He nodded slowly. He looked back at Alice. Her face was ashen. All right, he said, his voice now firm and decisive. Here is what is going to happen. He held up one finger. Option 1, tomorrow morning, the Athena Lounge is to be permanently closed, locked, and converted back into a storage closet. All of the furniture and equipment will be sold off. We go back to the way things were. He held up a second finger. Option 2, you will approve the request for the Ari's Lounge immediately. You will allocate an identical budget. You will personally oversee its construction to ensure it is, in every single detail, a mirror image of your lounge. It will be expedited and completed within 3 weeks. He paused, letting the ultimatum hang in the air. Either way, the special privilege you created is gone. We either have 2 lounges, or we have 0 lounges. But we will not have one. That is not negotiable. He leaned forward again, his eyes locked on hers. And let me be crystal clear. If I ever hear about you pulling a stunt like this again, if I so much as get a whiff of any initiative that creates legal exposure or divides my staff, I will fire you so fast your email account will be deactivated before you get back to your desk. Do you understand me? Alice just sat there, utterly broken. The fight was gone. All the ideology, all the smug certainty had evaporated under the harsh light of reality. She looked small. Yes, she whispered. I understand. He turned back to me. Which will it be, Elian? 0 lounges or 2? I thought for a second. Closing hers would be a victory, but it would be a bitter one. Getting ours would be a monument to this entire farce. 2 lounges, I said. The director nodded. Fine. Alice, you have your instructions. Get it done. He looked at us both. Now, get out of my office. I have a company to run. We both stood up and walked out without another word. In the hallway, Alice didn't even look in my direction. She just walked away, her shoulders slumped in defeat. I had won. The next day, a company-wide memo went out from Alice's office. It was a short, terse announcement about a new wellness initiative to create a lounge for male employees, in the interest of promoting total workplace equality. The tone was so forced and robotic, you could practically feel her grinding her teeth as she typed it. And just like that, construction started on the empty office space right next to the Athena Lounge. She was true to the director's word. She had to be. She personally had to sign off on every purchase order. Azael and I had the satisfaction of watching her approve the invoice for the exact same high-end espresso machine. We saw her sign for the delivery of the exact same model of massage chair. Every single item on our list, she had to personally approve and pay for from her HR budget. It must have been agony. The men in the office were walking on air. The sense of relief and vindication was incredible. It was like a cloud had been lifted. People were smiling again, collaborating. The us versus them tension just vanished. We had our brotherhood back. We had stood together, used the system, and won. We hadn't shouted or protested. We had been smarter. 3 weeks later, to the day, the Ari's Lounge was complete. It was perfect. It was an exact mirror of theirs, but we made it our own. We had the same great coffee, the same comfy chairs, the same stocked fridge. But instead of a bookshelf full of self-help and feminist literature, we put in a bookshelf with sci-fi classics and biographies of explorers and engineers. Where they had a pot of orchids, we had a cool-looking bonsai tree. And the centerpiece, the one thing we requested that they didn't have, a massive wall-mounted 4K television with the latest generation gaming console hooked up to it. The day it opened, it was like a holiday. Guys were in there, playing games, talking, laughing. The morale boost was off the charts. The old break room, the Goblin Cave, was officially abandoned. Someone just taped an out-of-order sign on the door, and it was forgotten. The best part, the true poetic justice, was what happened to the Athena Lounge. It was still there, and the women still used it. But it wasn't special anymore. It had lost its power. Its status as an exclusive elite club was gone forever. It was just the other room. the girls' room, and right next door was the boys' room. All the smugness and superiority that came with it had completely evaporated. Alice's grand project, her symbol of progressive female empowerment, had been rendered meaningless. She hadn't created a special privilege. She had just been forced to create a separate but equal facility, something that felt less like a modern corporate perk and more like something from a history book. And, oh, it killed her. You could see it every day. She would walk down the hall with her head down, trying not to look at either lounge. Sometimes she would have to walk past the Aries lounge when the door was open, and she'd hear the sound of a video game or a group of guys laughing at a joke, and her face would just tighten into a mask of pure resentment. She had to live every single day with a giant, tangible monument to her own failure, a monument she had been forced to build herself. One afternoon, I was in our lounge making an espresso. Azael was on the couch, playing some racing game on the big screen. He paused the game and looked over at me. "You know," he said with a grin, "in a weird, twisted way, Alice is the best HR manager we've ever had." I took a sip of my perfectly brewed coffee. "She really did fight for better workplace conditions for men," I replied. "She just didn't know it at the time." We both laughed. Justice, as it turns out, is a drink best served from a high-end Italian espresso machine that your enemy was forced to buy for you, and it tasted damn good.